time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The Business News headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible.
JPS grid rebuild, a Caribbean finance push, and PayPal's €1 billion expansion deal. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Monday, November 17, 2025. I'm Rochelle Moncrief. Thanks so much for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, Jamaica Public Service undertakes a massive grid rebuild as Hurricane Melissa shreds the country's transmission network. On the regional front, the Caribbean faces a new climate finance reality as COP30 unveils an over $1 trillion implementation drive. And over on the global stage, PayPal and KKR strike a €65 billion buy now, pay later financing pact aimed at supercharging European growth. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the QMAX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why QMAX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with an update on Jamaica's power grid, which has been placed under the greatest strain in its modern history. With restoration teams spread across the island and damage assessments still underway, the Jamaica Public Service Limited JPS says the scale of the challenge is becoming clearer, warning that Hurricane Melissa has left deep, unprecedented damage across the power network and will require an historic rebuild. In a recent update, President and CEO Hugh Grant says the Category 5 hurricane severely weakened key components of the system, pushing the utility into the largest reconstruction effort it has ever undertaken. He notes that Melissa has crippled the country's transmission network, which is the high-voltage corridor that feeds the island.
The hurricane caused widespread damage, not only to the distribution lines that you may see on the streets, but also something very unique that we witnessed was also significant damage to our transmission infrastructure that's miles away that many can't see, but that also was severely damaged.
Grant revealed that more than 70% of JPS's transmission system suffered major damage.
So you, in your homes or businesses, you're actually seeing the stream that may look like it's intact and it's okay, but the reality is upstream of that, that source, that main channel, the riverbed is blocked, it's dry. And that riverbed that's dry is our transmission system that had significant impact. That steel lattice structure that I shared earlier is our transmission system that is over 70% that was impacted, damaged, and out of service.
That was CEO and President of JPS, Hugh Grant. Meanwhile, Jamaica's hurricane recovery is carrying a new and urgent warning. Hurricane Melissa's public health fallout could slow the country's economic rebound. At a national briefing on Sunday, Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton revealed that the hurricane has created textbook conditions for disease spread. But behind the health warnings is a broader economic risk. The workers most exposed to these diseases are the same ones powering Jamaica's recovery. So far, the ministry has confirmed 11 suspected cases of leptospirosis, with national epidemiologist Dr. Karen Webster Carr highlighting several parishes where flooding has already placed key segments of the workforce at increased health risk during this critical recovery period.
We are seeing an increase in leptospirosis post-Melissa 2 weeks after. So far, we have 11 cases that have been classified as leptospirosis based on the symptoms. So we may have gotten additional notification, but when we look at what the person presented with, only 11 would have been classified as suspected leptospirosis. So these cases are in the parishes of St. James, Hanover, St. Elizabeth, and St. Anne.
That was Jamaica's national epidemiologist, Dr. Karen Webster Carr. In other news, NCB Financial Group NCBFG has unleashed what may be the most aggressive and fast-moving private sector relief effort Jamaica has ever seen, with Group CEO Robert Almeida noting that the revamped fund has already blasted past the $500 million mark. Speaking at the group's Q4 investor briefing on Friday, Almeida says the fund was anchored by a $250 million injection from its subsidiaries.
We also moved swiftly to support recovery. After raising 459 million Jamaican dollars for Hurricane Beryl last year, we relaunched the Building a Better Jamaica Fund within days of Hurricane Melissa's passage. Anchored by a combined Jamaican dollar $250 million contribution from NCBJ and the Guardian Group, the fund has already surpassed $500 million, making it the largest domestic hurricane relief effort of its kind.
That was NCBFG Group CEO Robert Almeida. And Cygnus has thrown down a bold marker for Caribbean corporate leadership, launching a $60 million hurricane relief and rebuild initiative that is quickly becoming the region's most consequential private sector response to Hurricane Melissa's devastation. What started as Cygnus's Jamaican $16 million seed commitment has now grown into a regional movement, boosted by a major contribution from the Bahamas Striping Group of companies. The initiative rests on a simple idea. An economy cannot be rebuilt by patchwork fixes. It requires smart investment and climate-ready infrastructure. Under the plan, 30% of the fund will support urgent relief, food, clean water, solar lighting, medical supplies, and inputs for farmers. The remaining 70% will finance the rebuilding of schools, hospitals, and agriculture using stronger renewable energy-based systems built to survive the next storm. Momentum accelerated when Bahamas Striping stepped forward as more than a donor. The company matched Cygnus's Jamaican $16 million and pledged 5,000 school bags for displaced students, signaling a deeper regional partnership at a critical time. We go now to updates from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Monday's currency trading session, the US dollar is selling for $161.68, the Canadian for $115.70, the pound sterling for $212.35, while $192.16 is the going rate for the euro. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Monday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 111 stocks, of which 46 advanced, 41 declined, and 24 traded firm. Leading the winners are Express Catering, 138 Student Living Jamaica Variable Preference, One Great Studio Company, and Knutsford Express Services. While leading the losers are JFP Limited, Jamaica Broilers Group, AMG Packaging and Paper Company, and Pan Jamaica Group. The main index advanced by 1,075.02 points or 0.35% to close at 312,472.99 points. The junior market index advanced by 36.20 points or 1.09% to close at 3,371.90 points.
And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by Chris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard.
In today's Market Education Feature, we're looking at business process redesign. Business process redesign is the practice of rethinking and transforming a company's core workflows to achieve major improvements in performance, including return on investment, cost efficiency, and service quality. It can apply to any area of operations, from manufacturing and production to sales and customer service. Many companies bring in external experts to guide these large-scale changes. Organizations often pursue redesign when industry shifts demand new, more efficient systems. In some cases, that means replacing old processes entirely to adopt faster, smarter, and more competitive methods of doing business.
The Market Education Feature was brought to you by Chris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards.
And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
We get it! We get the big contract! 50,000 units a month for 3 years! Great! We need help!
If you are a business owner that requires capital for the expansion of your business, talk to a registered broker today to find out more about listing your company on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, an efficient alternative to other financing options.
Thank God for the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market.
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. The Caribbean is staring at a new climate finance landscape this evening as COP30's presidency confirmed that global negotiators will spend this week shaping decisions that directly affect how small island economies access capital, adaptation funding, and just transition support. Speaking at the end of week one, COP30's climate negotiator, Ambassador Lilian Chagas, says the conference has now formally advanced 15 major negotiation tracks, including adaptation finance and global stocktake implementation.
15 of the substantive issues, the substantive agenda that we have before us have been forwarded to conclusion until the end of the conference. And this is a really important outcome because it's not obvious. You know, there are many views about the issues at stake on adaptation, finance for adaptation, what just transition will look like for countries, all the decisions on finance. So it's not obvious to have agreed texts to continue work.
That was COP30's climate negotiator Ambassador Lilian Chagas. In Trinidad and Tobago, former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has issued the country's most explosive economic warning in years, declaring that the U.S.-Venezuela military standoff has now crossed directly into Trinidad and Tobago's bottom line and could shut down the very gas that powers the economy. In a media briefing earlier today, Rowley delivered a blistering takedown of the government's foreign policy strategy, accusing the Kamla Prasad Bisesa-led administration of recklessly dragging Trinidad and Tobago into a war posture that could cripple the country's economy.
We are dependent on gas from platforms 60 miles out there. We don't have a navy that could protect us. We don't have a Coast Guard that could even stand out there to be present, to hail anybody who's coming at us. That's a vulnerability of the worst kind. And if that becomes part of the proceedings, not by missiles being fired at us, not by bombs being fired at us, but just by a credible threat to those platforms, Trinidad and Tobago is now in a current against which we cannot swim. Because if a threat like that comes to us, a credible threat, that those platforms are in fact legitimate targets, those international companies will do one thing. They will remove their staff from the platform. And once the staff comes off the platform, most of those platforms are manned. Once they come off the platform, it shuts down the gas supply to Trinidad and Tobago.
Rowley says the government has placed a bull's eye on the nation's economic heartbeat.
It would have shut down Tiantec, and this bulb will not light. Where did you see Trinidad and Tobago's interests? Can you genuinely say that Trinidad and Tobago has made provision to protect itself from an attacked Venezuela? If Venezuela finds itself under attack from the United States, assisted by Trinidad and Tobago, does that not make Trinidad and Tobago a legitimate target? Or have you come to the conclusion that, man, they ain't gonna do nothing? Is that so? You have jumped in this high-stake geopolitical issue, and you've taken a position as a combatant.
That was former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley. And A.S. Bryden and Sons Holdings Limited may be in the middle of its biggest growth run yet, but the numbers show a company still fighting to turn scale into real earnings power. For the 9 months to September 2025, the company delivered a surging US $447.9 million in revenue, up a massive 36%. This was driven by new acquisitions, stronger consumer demand, and export sales that jumped 43%. Gross profit also followed suit, climbing to US $123.8 million. Despite the roaring top line, net profit stayed flat at US $7.1 million, as operating expenses, including wage pressures, acquisition costs, and ERP delays at CPJ ballooned 44%, squeezing margins and halting earnings momentum. Meanwhile, the third quarter delivered the sharpest blow. Revenue rose 8.7%, but net profit fell 52% to US $1.2 million, pulled down by higher finance costs tied to recent debt usage. Management is now racing into the final quarter with a hard pivot, tightening working capital, cutting costs, accelerating synergies, and pushing market margin recovery, all to ensure the group's expanding footprint finally delivers expanding profit. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 19 securities, of which 4 advanced, 9 declined, and 6 traded firm. Today's winners are Unilever Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, Grace Kennedy, and Massey Holdings, while leading the losers are the West Indian Tobacco Company, One Caribbean Media, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, and A.S. Bryden and Sons Holdings. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index declined by 15.80 points to close at 1,340.20. The Composite Index declined by 7.97 points to close at 933.20. The Cross-Listed Index advanced by 0.07 points to close at 69.66. The SME Index remained at 96.30. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up.
Been coming along well.
Thanks, man. You know, it's a long time I've been working at it.
I can see that. I saw your mail by the gate, so I'll pick it up for you. But tell me something. Why are you still receiving dividend checks by mail?
What do you mean about that?
You need to give JCSD a mandate.
You know, me hear about the mandate them. I'm going over there right now.
A mandate means giving instructions to the Jamaica Central Securities Depository Limited, JCSD, relating to the handling of your dividend or interest payment. There are 3 types of mandates. The first is a bank mandate. The second is a hold mandate. Lastly, we have what we call a third-party mandate, with which the investor may wish to send their dividend or interest to someone other than the parties on their account or institution of their choice.
In international news, PayPal has locked in one of the largest consumer credit financing deals in Europe, renewing and expanding its partnership with investment giant KKR. Under the agreement, KKR will purchase up to 65 billion euros worth of PayPal's European Buy Now, Pay Later (BNPL) receivables, backed by a 6 billion euro revolving loan commitment. The move extends their 2023 partnership and strengthens KKR's global asset-based finance platform, which lends against receivables and other collateral. It also supports PayPal's Q4 and full-year profit outlook at a time when BNPL use is surging among millennials and Gen Zs amid tighter household budgets. PayPal will continue managing underwriting, customer service, and credit performance for all BNPL products. The company, which raised its annual profit forecast in October and issued its first ever dividend, says this deal positions BNPL as a core engine of profitability heading into 2026. And while fintech giants are tightening credit partnerships, another fast-growing sector is racing to capitalize on a narrow IPO window before the year closes. York Space Systems is moving quickly to capture the 2-week IPO window left in 2025, filing plans to list on the NYSE under the symbol YSS. The satellite manufacturer reported a 59% jump in revenue for the first 9 months of the year, rising to $280.9 million, while shrinking its net loss to $56 million. Analysts warn that only December 8 and December 15 remain as viable listing weeks before market shutdown for the holidays. Many companies have already postponed offerings to 2026. York, valued at more than $1 billion in 2022 sale to AE Industrial Partners, would become the latest space tech firm to go public following Firefly Aerospace's listing earlier this year. Goldman Sachs, Jefferies, and Wells Fargo are leading the deal. Back on the regulatory front, Europe is tightening the screws on energy giants after a landmark ruling in France. France's antitrust authority has imposed 187.5 million euros in fines on Total Energies, Rubis, and EG Group after ruling that the companies operated an anti-competitive fuel supply arrangement in Corsica. From 2016 to 2023, the firms jointly controlled the island's only fuel import depots through DPLC, effectively shutting out competitors such as Ferrandi. Regulators say the setup forced rivals to buy under terms set by their competitors, ultimately pushing up pump prices for consumers. Total Energies faces the largest fine at 115.8 million euros. Rubis will pay 64.7 million euros and EG Group 7 million euros. Rubis says it is appalled and denies any wrongdoing, while Total Energies has not yet responded. All three companies may appeal, though payment is not suspended. And finally, in the life sciences sector, one of Europe's most influential investors is quietly trimming its exposure. Novo Holdings, controlling shareholder of Novo Nordisk, is reducing its position in British medical products maker Convatec Group, selling 154.5 million shares, equal to 7.8% of its stake. Novo has been a major investor since 2017 and previously held board representation before stepping back from governance in 2023. The sale comes shortly after Convatec forecast double-digit profit growth for 2026, sending shares higher and creating a favorable exit window. Despite the reduction, Novo remains Convatec's largest shareholder with more than 21% ownership. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break.
So much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
Recap our top stories. In the local news, JPS undertakes massive grid rebuild to its transmission network post Melissa. Regionally, Caribbean faces a new climate finance reality. COP30 pushes a $1 trillion implementation drive. And internationally, PayPal and KKR strike 65 billion euro BNPL financing pact to power expansion. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rachel Moncrief. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
Hi, I'm Delano Williams, and you're watching CBX.